Respected viewers, imagine a man whose voice has comforted millions, whose face has been a fixture in living rooms across the world. Now standing alone in the silence of his own home, his heart heavy with truths he's carried for decades. At 74, Dr. Phil McGraw, a name synonymous with guidance and wisdom, finally confronts a chapter of his life he has never spoken about publicly. A chapter cloaked in heartbreak, secrets, and a love he once thought unbreakable. For years, the world has seen him as the confident, unshakable counselor, yet behind the studio lights and the carefully curated smiles lay a story few could imagine. A story of marriage, devotion, and the quiet erosion of a bond that had once seemed destined to last forever. In the echoing halls of the McGraw household, memories linger like shadows, the laughter that once filled the air, the whispered arguments no one heard, the quiet tears hidden behind closed doors. His wife, the woman whose beauty and grace captured hearts, was not merely a companion. She was a partner in a life built on shared dreams, late-night conversations, and the silent understanding of two people who thought they could weather anything together. Yet beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect union, tensions brewed, subtle but persistent, until the foundation began to crack in ways neither could have foreseen. Friends, colleagues, and even Hollywood insiders like Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Mehmet Oz had glimpsed the warmth and connection between them, but they too only saw the curated version of love, a version that masked the fractures forming in private moments, away from cameras and accolades. The unraveling began quietly, almost imperceptibly. Dr. Phil recalls nights spent awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sound of his wife's restless sleep, and feeling an inexplicable distance that grew heavier with every airy passing day. He had always believed that love could conquer the unspoken, that marriage was a fortress against life's unpredictability. But life, he discovered, had other plans. Behind the studio lights, his professional persona remained unshaken. He counseled millions on trust, relationships, and forgiveness. Yet in his own home, he struggled with a silence that words could not bridge. Family gatherings became exercises in restraint, smiles forced, laughter hollowed while the children watched, sensing the tension yet unable to articulate it. The heartbreak of realizing that the person you vowed to spend your life with could become a stranger is a weight few understand. And Dr. Phil, for all his wisdom, was not immune. The private sorrow was compounded by the inevitability of public curiosity. The world expected explanations, sound bites, clarity, and yet there was none. In Hollywood, where divorce announcements are often laced with blame, spectacle, and controversy, Dr. Phil chose restraint, a choice that carried its own emotional toll. He wanted to protect his children, the sanctity of his family, and the dignity of the woman he once loved with every fiber of his being. Yet, protecting them meant internalizing a pain so profound it sometimes felt unendurable. There were moments of despair, hidden in the quiet hours of night. Dr. Phil describes standing alone in the living room, the soft hum of the refrigerator in the background, and feeling a hollow ache in his chest, a sorrow that had no audience, no cameras, no applause. The marriage that had survived countless professional pressures, public scrutiny, and the trials of raising children was unraveling due to private battles neither could articulate, tensions that had festered beneath polite conversation, kind gestures, and shared routines. His wife, a woman of striking presence and quiet strength, carried her own burdens, frustration, unspoken disappointment, and a longing for connection that had become elusive. Together, they had built a life of appearances, a life admired by many, yet they were both prisoners of the very expectations that once bound them together. Dr. Phil remembers phone calls with trusted confidants, some of them luminaries of Hollywood, figures like Ellen DeGeneres and Tom Hanks, seeking counsel, insight, or merely someone who could listen without judgment. Even with such support, the weight of unsaid words and withheld emotions continued to grow, a storm held in check only by the routine of everyday life. Health, too, became an unspoken factor. Aging bodies and the creeping toll of stress brought vulnerability that had previously been ignored. Sleep disturbances, minor illnesses, and the quiet awareness of mortality sharpened every argument, every moment of misunderstanding, every silence that stretched too long between them. Dr. Phil reflects on the irony. A man whose career was built on diagnosing and resolving the struggles of others found himself incapable of resolving the most intimate and urgent struggle of all. Regret became a constant companion. He recalls moments of looking at family photographs, snapshots frozen in time, and recognizing the gradual erosion of connection. The images betray nothing of the private discontent, yet for him they are reminders of opportunities lost, conversations avoided, and emotions left unspoken. In the quietest hours, tears were shed alone, whispers of sorrow carried into empty rooms, and the aching desire to have somehow saved what had been slowly slipping away weighed on him like gravity itself. As the emotional weight of the divorce pressed on him, Dr. Phil also confronted the hidden truths that few outside the inner circle knew. There were difficult admissions, silent acknowledgments of mistakes, and the realization that love alone could not repair fractures born from years of unvoiced conflict. Friends and family, while supportive, could not bridge the chasm that had developed. Therapists and counselors offered guidance, yet even professional expertise has its limits when confronted with the depth of accumulated heartache. In those private moments, he considered the words of other Hollywood couples who had navigated similar heartbreaks, Julia Roberts and Daniel Moder, or Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell, recognizing that even the brightest stars, the most admired partnerships, are not immune to the silent erosion of intimacy, the creeping weight of unresolved grievances. The gravity of it all was overwhelming, and Dr. Phil often found himself sitting in the shadows of his own home, listening to the echoes of laughter that no longer existed, yearning for a connection that had quietly slipped beyond his reach. Beyond his reach. The mornings became particularly haunting. Dr. Phil recalls waking to an empty side of the bed, the soft rumble of the city outside the bedroom window offering no comfort, only a reminder of absence. Conversations that once flowed easily now required careful navigation, as if every word could ignite an argument or deepen a wound. The smallest disagreements about finances, schedules, or household matters became symbolic battlegrounds for unspoken frustrations that had been accumulating for years. Even laughter, once abundant and effortless, felt strained, forced, and sometimes bitter, echoing with a sadness that neither could articulate. Those closest to the couple noticed a subtle change. The warmth that had defined their interactions dimmed, replaced by polite distance, a mutual avoidance born of fear that any engagement might unravel what little remained of their connection. Dr. Phil, ever the counselor, tried to rationalize, compartmentalize, and analyze, yet he quickly discovered that the tools that served him in guiding others were woefully inadequate in the arena of his own heart. In the rare moments of vulnerability, he would confide in his children, but even these exchanges were fraught with difficulty. He struggled to explain emotions that seemed both too complex and too private for them to fully understand. He feared burdening them with the weight of his despair, and yet he could not escape the awareness that the fracture in their family unit was increasingly visible, a ripple of tension that touched everything from holiday gatherings to casual weekend afternoons. The impact on his children, who had grown up observing their father as a figure of stability and wisdom, was subtle but profound. Quiet apprehension, guarded questions, and the tentative searching for reassurance in a home that had shifted beneath their feet. Amidst the domestic turmoil, Dr. Phil wrestled with his own identity. He was no longer simply a husband or father. He was the man who had dedicated his life to understanding human behavior, to counseling millions, to projecting an image of confidence and clarity. Yet, within the walls of his own home, he confronted the humbling truth that insight and authority do not shield one from the vulnerabilities of love, the fragility of trust, or the heartbreak of loss. There were nights when he would pace the hallway, phone clutched loosely in his hand, imagining the conversations he could have had differently, the moments of patience he could have exercised, the declarations of love that went unsaid. It was a solitude born not of choice, but of circumstance, a quiet torment compounded by the public life that afforded him no retreat from speculation or curiosity. Regret, in its purest form, settled over him like a second skin. He recalls reading interviews he had given years prior, reflecting on marriage, communication, and commitment, and feeling a sting of irony at the contrast between his words and the reality of his own failing union. Even the admiration of peers, celebrities like Dr. Oz, Lisa Ling, and Tony Robbins, offered little solace. Their respect was professional, their understanding of his personal grief partial at best. The private tragedy of his divorce, the silent erosion of intimacy, was a weight carried alone, even in a room full of well-meaning confidants.